Welcome back, everyone, to our true identity. We're so glad you're joining us again today.
Yes, welcome. It's wonderful to be here with you all.
We're continuing our journey together, replacing those lies we might believe about ourselves with the deep, abiding truth of God's Word. And as you know, we're your guest hosts for this special weekly series.
That's right. We're the authors of In the Fullness of Time, and each week we're walking through a chapter of our book, looking at history through the lens of God's providence.
Exactly. Unpacking how God was meticulously preparing the world step by step, year by year. And this week we arrive at chapter 8, which dives into the year 7 BC.
7 BC. Now, this is an interesting one because, well, when you first look at it in the grand sweep of Roman history, it almost seems quiet, unassuming even.
It really does. I mean, think about the context. Rome is deep into the Augustan Golden Age. It feels magnificent, supremely confident, seemingly unshakable.
Absolutely. The temples are grand monuments to this imperial power. Augustus has brought in new laws creating stability, or at least the appearance of it. Poets like Virgil and Horace have already penned their great works.
And others are just starting. So, on the surface, no obvious chaos, no dramatic collapse looming, no big flashing signs saying something major is wrong.
It presents as this year of, well, almost serenity, profound stability.
And yet, and this is what we really explored in the book,
Yeah.
beneath that gleaming, elegant surface, something profound was shifting. It wasn't loud, but it was deep.
We described it as a kind of hesitation, like the world took a breath, maybe held it for a moment, not falling apart, but recalibrating.
Exactly. Power didn't just crumble away overnight. It sort of pulled back. Brilliance didn't just flicker out. It quietly withdrew itself.
And trust. Well, trust didn't shatter spectacularly. It frayed slowly, almost invisibly at the edges.
And that's what makes 7 BC so compelling, but also, paradoxically, harder to really notice in the big picture. Nothing overtly broke.
Right. There wasn't one single catastrophic event that year that, demanded to be carved in stone or sung about in epics. No massive battle lost. No emperor suddenly dying.
Just this deepening quiet.
That's really the key, isn't it? It was a year where some really key figures just quietly stepped away from the spotlight. And behind the scenes, in the halls of power, rumors started to thicken, like fog rolling in.
And way above it all, the stars themselves were moving in these silent, sort of cosmic dances that most people down below probably didn't even register.
Now, the silence wasn't total. Of course not. There were voices beginning to stir, like Ovid's, who we'll definitely get into. He was starting to craft things that would echo for, well, millennia.
But the overwhelming feeling, the dominant note, was this undercurrent of change. Really subtle, but immensely powerful, like a deep river moving silently beneath a calm surface.
And that quietness, that almost unseen quality of 7 BC, that's precisely why we felt it was so important to bring it to you today, here on Our True Identity.
Because it really invites us to think about our own lives, doesn't it? I mean, how many times have you, listening right now, experienced what you might call quiet seasons? Those periods where maybe you feel a bit unseen, or where there isn't a lot of obvious outward movement happening. Maybe you feel like you're just waiting, or perhaps even needing to retreat a little from all the noise and busyness.
It's such a powerful parallel, and it's something we really tried to draw out in the fullness of time. Just like this historical year looked stable, but was actually, well, pregnant with these unseen shifts.
Yeah.
Our own lives often have these seasons of seeming stillness, even obscurity. And the core idea we want to explore today is this. These historical moments of absence, of retreat, of silence, even the cosmic movements, they mirror how God often works in our own lives. Hidden ways, but profoundly formative.
Yes, absolutely. It's a beautiful reminder that His hand is always moving, even when we can't see it, even when things feel stagnant.
That's the encouraging truth, isn't it? The absence of outward movement is not the absence of meaning. God, in His infinite wisdom and love, often does His deepest, most transformative work in us during these quiet, unseen places.
He's preparing us. He's preparing the world for what is still to come. So let's really unpack this pivotal, yet oh so subtle year of 7 BC. Let's explore some of these unseen shifts that, well, they really did shape the future in profound ways.
Okay, where should we start? Maybe with a prime example of absence speaking louder than words, Tiberius. His quiet, self-imposed withdrawal to the Greek island of Rhodes.
Oh, yes. Tiberius. This is fascinating because it wasn't like the dramatic storming out, not what you might expect from a decorated Roman general, Augustus' stepson.
Not at all. The ancient historians, like Tacitus, they use this language. He slipped away from Rome, just quietly removed himself. No big fanfare, no angry speeches, no public funeral for his public career, so to speak.
He just stepped off a stage he felt he no longer belonged on, or perhaps wasn't truly wanted on, despite being utterly indispensable.
And think about Rome. A city defined by presence, by power, by public spectacle. For Tiberius to deliberately choose absence. Well, like you said in the book, his absence made more noise than any speech.
It's so true. He wasn't dead. He wasn't officially disgraced and banished. He chose this exile. And here's this man, Augustus's adopted son, a truly formidable general.
He'd commanded legions on the toughest frontiers. He'd borne the weight of Rome's borders in places like Gaul and Germania. He'd just come back from these grueling campaigns, successfully putting down major revolts in Pannonia, securing the Rhine.
He was proven, loyal, supremely capable, and he just vanishes from Rome.
But he doesn't vanish entirely, does he? He's still alive, still out there on roads, observing, and that quiet, chosen removal, the fact that he was still this powerful figure, just watching from afar, that must have been incredibly unsettling. For the Roman people, yes, but maybe most of all for Augustus himself.
Definitely for Augustus. And Tiberius chose Rhodes. Why Rhodes?
Well, it wasn't a military outpost or a place to build a rival power base. It was known as an intellectual hub, an island of philosophers, rhetoricians, schools of learning. A major maritime center, too, so connected but separate.
So a place to retreat but not disappear. A place to observe the empire he helped build, but without the heavy armor of a general or the mask he had to wear in Roman politics.
Exactly. And the accounts say he spent years there, 7 years in total, actually. He immersed himself in study. Astrology was apparently a big interest, and rhetoric. He'd attend public lectures, just like an ordinary citizen. Imagine that.
A Roman commander sitting in class.
Debating philosophers, sharing meals. There were even stories he, for a time, dismissed his lictors, those official bodyguards that symbolized his rank. Almost like saying, I'm not playing that role anymore.
Wow. A deliberate stepping back.
A very deliberate cultivation of this persona of a private scholar, such a stark contrast to the battle-hardened general. But of course, he couldn't truly become invisible. Eyes were still on him. Whispers crossed the Mediterranean.
Because the very fact he'd removed himself, that Augustus hadn't forced him out, was maybe more unnerving than open rebellion would have been. It was a silent challenge, wasn't it?
A huge silent challenge. And this gets us right into those fascinating dynamics of power and succession in Rome.
Right. Because Augustus, he had no biological sons to inherit the empire. All his hopes were pinned on his two young grandsons, Gaius and Lucius.
Bright boys, handsome, full of youthful promise, apparently quite popular, but completely untested. They hadn't faced the brutal realities of Roman campaigns or the cutthroat politics of the Senate.
And then you have Tiberius. Not just tested, but forged in the fire. He hadn't chased glory, maybe, but he'd absolutely earned respect through decades of difficult, often brutal, loyal service. He really embodied that disciplined Roman ideal.
And yet, when Augustus looked to the future, publicly at least, it wasn't Tiberius he was lifting up, it was the boys. And this highlights such a painful truth, something we touch on in the book. It is a painful thing to be useful but not wanted.
That cuts deep.
To be incredibly capable, but ultimately inconvenient. Tiberius had done everything asked of him, probably more. He'd obeyed his very ambitious mother, Livia Drusilla.
Who was a force herself. Calculation, ambition, wrapped in silk, as we put it. She meticulously guided his career, engineered his rise.
She did. And he'd served Augustus loyally, led the troops brilliantly, swallowed countless slights over the years. But Augustus was crafting this narrative, wasn't he? A story of smooth, almost divinely ordained dynastic succession.
And in that story, youthful charisma and direct bloodline seem more valuable than Tiberius's scars and proven competence.
And how did Tiberius respond to being overlooked, to being put in this holding pattern, not with fury, not with demands?
He just grew silent. That's how we described it. While Augustus is managing the PR, saying Tiberius retired for rest, while conspicuously promoting the grandsons, Tiberius just withdraws.
The emotional core, the real recognition he must have craved after all that service, it just wasn't there from Augustus. And the Roman public. They like the image of the young heir, sure, but images aren't always substance, are they? You have to wonder if people sense the tension, that unspoken question hanging in the air.
Absolutely. And this absence, this withdrawal, it had a profound, though maybe unseen at first, impact on Rome's future. It put this subtle strain on the whole Augustan system.
Because the legions, those hardened veterans who had actually fought alongside Tiberius,
Hmm.
who remembered him bleeding with them in the swamps of Germania or the mountains of Illyricum. Their loyalty wasn't just to an image, it was to him.
They remembered his discipline, his strategy, his quiet courage against fierce enemies. Their loyalty didn't just vanish when he went to Rhodes.
And his mother, Livia, even she, with all her maneuvering, eventually saw, as we wrote, the chill that settled over her son as he realized his true, rather inconvenient place in Augustus's grand design. That dynamic, even unspoken, was a powerful undercurrent running beneath the surface.
So in that painful gap between what he'd earned and what was offered, basically, wait indefinitely while these two kids grow up, he chose Rhodes. And his exile didn't immediately break the empire, no, but it definitely bent its future.
Every day he stayed away, that illusion of a smooth, unquestioned succession got a little thinner. Gaius and Lucius were untested potential. Tiberius was proven reality. And as Rome looked ahead, you could almost feel these hairline cracks appearing under the surface of Augustan peace.
Cracks, shaped like a man sitting quietly on an island, observing. A powerful ghost haunting the imperial court. He became this constant, uncomfortable question mark in Augustus's carefully constructed narrative.
So Rhodes wasn't just a refuge, it became a kind of mirror for the empire itself. It reflected this deep uncertainty, this ambiguity that Rome, which craved ironclad order and destiny, just couldn't quite resolve.
Here's a man worthy of rule who's not asking for it anymore. A servant who's stopped serving yet remains loyal. He's a living paradox, a question.
And that silence, that absence, it ultimately shaped the course of history by stepping aside rather than standing tall. It's a different kind of power, isn't it? The power of withdrawal.
So, reflecting on this,
Right.
what does Tiberius' story mean for us? For our own identities, our own journeys, this powerful figure stepping back. It speaks so directly to those seasons in our own lives, doesn't it?
It really does. When we feel unseen, maybe set aside, or when we feel a clear call to retreat from the noise, from the usual demands and expectations.
And the lesson here, perhaps, is that just like Tiberius, our absence or our stillness in those times can be incredibly formative. It can shape our future, maybe influence things around us in ways we just can't see yet.
God is so often at work in those hidden spaces,
Yeah.
preparing us, refining us, especially when we feel least recognized. It shows that silence really can speak volumes, and what looks like a retreat might actually be a powerful setup for what's next in our true identity formation.
Beautifully put. Okay, so from the silence of a powerful man in exile, let's pivot to another, very different kind of quiet beginning in 7 BC, the birth of a literary masterpiece.
Yes, Ovid, and the beginnings of his metamorphoses. Now, Ovid wasn't a soldier or a senator, he was a poet. A man with, as we described him, ink-stained hands and a heart full of metaphor.
And he starts crafting something in 7 BC, or around then, that will ultimately outlast marble statues, outlast the Roman Empire itself, outlast the very myths it retells. It's staggering to think about its influence.
It really is, and the contrast is so striking. While Rome is looking outward, securing borders, managing provinces, and looking upward, deifying Augustus, building temples, Ovid turned inward.
And there was no big announcement, right? No imperial commission for this epic poem.
None at all. It wasn't like Virgil writing the Aeneid with Augustus's blessing. This was just, well, we imagine a man perhaps seated beneath the shade of a portico along the Tiber, or walking its shaded banks, arranging verse in his mind like a sculptor shaping clay.
Such a quiet, solitary beginning for something so monumental. No fanfares, just the internal rhythm of verse taking shape.
And his vision was immense. The Metamorphoses, when finished, would weave together hundreds of myths. Starting from the creation of the world, the fire brought by Prometheus, the great flood survived by Deucalion, the wanderings of Aeneas.
All the foundational stories.
But he didn't present them as, dry history lessons or moral fables. They were stories, vivid, dramatic, often startling stories, so alive they'd flow across centuries.
And the core theme weaving through it all was transformation. Metamorphosis.
Exactly. How people and gods literally change their forms. How intense emotions reshape beings. Grief turns someone into a river. Vengeance transforms another into a tree. Deep longing elevates someone to become stars in the sky.
He was exploring the very nature of change. The messy, tangled, raw, human aspects of it. Posing that fundamental question, what does it truly mean to be changed?
And in doing that, he was doing something subtly, maybe even dangerously subversive for the time.
How so? Because Augustus valued order, stability, a clear narrative.
Precisely. Ovid's poetry, on the surface, often slattered the Roman myths, the ones that made Rome feel eternal, divinely chosen. But his voice had this unique tone. We called it a dangerous ambivalence, a kind of playful irreverence almost.
He wasn't just repeating the old stories, he was reframing them.
Yes, peeling back the layers, exposing the complex, often contradictory human emotions underneath the myths. His gods weren't the perfectly curated, stately deities of Augustus's official cult. They were powerful, yes, but also often petty, impulsive, deeply flawed, very human, in fact.
Injustice in his stories wasn't always neat or fair.
Yeah.
Love was often wild, painful, transformative in ways you couldn't predict.
Right, and through the beautiful, gentle rhythm of hexameter, that classic epic meter, and just the sheer gleam of poetic invention, Ovid was revealing a profound truth, maybe one Augustus didn't want highlighted. Rome's soul could not be controlled by statutes and laws alone.
Ah, interesting.
It was restless, alive, always subject to transformation. He was showing that beneath the empire's magnificent facade of eternal order, there was this uncontainable, ever-changing human spirit. It was, in its own way, a bold statement in an age that prized conformity.
Even if unspoken.
Even if unspoken. And what's truly amazing is that in 7 BC, this masterpiece wasn't finished. Maybe it wasn't even fully mapped out or named Metamorphoses yet. But the seed had taken root.
This quiet beginning, just a poet arranging verses, it would grow into this incredible legacy.
Absolutely. It would outlive Ovid himself, who later fell out of favor with Augustus and was exiled. It would outlive the Roman Empire. His stories, his lines would be quoted by Shakespeare centuries later. They'd inspire breathtaking paintings by artists like Titian.
Still studied today all over the world, a cornerstone of Western literature and thought, even influencing psychology, thinkers like Freud.
Ovid didn't build stone monuments, but he cast his nets into time, capturing something essential about the human condition that transcends any single empire or era.
Wow. So how does this connect back to us, to our identity?
Well, it speaks so powerfully to the hidden creative work God often does within us, doesn't it? Sometimes our most significant contributions, the things that might have the most lasting impact, they begin in these quiet, unannounced moments.
When we turn inward.
Yes. When we cultivate our gifts, explore our passions, wrestle with ideas in the quiet of our own hearts and minds, these seasons of unseen formation, they're absolutely crucial. They shape us, they refine us.
They prepare something within us that might have a profound impact later, even if we can't see the full picture right now.
Exactly. Our own personal transformations, they're often messy, challenging, hidden from view. But they're part of God's divine narrative for us. It reminds us that beneath every golden age lies a river of transformation, moving always forward, reshaping the story one ripple at a time. Our identity is constantly being formed, often most deeply in those unseen currents.
That's a beautiful connection. Okay, let's shift gears now, turning from the creative light of Ovid to a much darker, yet equally significant development happening in 7 BC.
Yes, we need to look eastward to Judea and the deepening shadow surrounding King Herod.
Herod the Great. He really had been a figure of immense stature, a symbol of strength, political cunning, a master builder.
Oh, an incredible builder. Cities like Caesarea Maritima on the coast, fortresses like Masada, and of course his most ambitious project. The massive, stunning expansion of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, it truly dazzled everyone, even the Romans.
By any measure, one of the most powerful client kings in the Eastern Roman provinces. He had once dazzled the empire with his achievements and his sheer force of will.
But by 7 BC, that brilliance was definitely dimming, and the threat wasn't coming from Roman legions or foreign enemies. It was coming, as we wrote, from within his household, within his mind.
A creeping paranoia.
A devastating paranoia. He kept building almost frantically. New palaces, fortresses, public works. It was as if masonry could silence the creeping suspicion in his heart. As if he could build walls high enough to keep out the betrayal he feared most, betrayal from his own sons.
And this leads to the terrible tragedy of 7 BC, involving his sons, Alexander and Aristobulus.
Yes. These were his sons by Mariamne, his beloved Hasmonean wife, whom he had also executed years earlier in a fit of jealous rage. Alexander and Aristobulus were not only charismatic and popular in their own right.
They also carried that Hasmonean bloodline, descendants of the Jewish priestly kings, a lineage many Jews still revered deeply.
Which made them both potential heirs and potential threats in Herod's eyes. They were widely loved by the people, seen by many as the rightful successors, and that popularity terrified Herod.
The historical accounts, especially from Josephus, are chilling. They detail how whispers reached him, words planted in shadow, watered by paranoia.
often instigated by Herod's other children, particularly his eldest son Antipater, who saw Alexander and Aristobulus as rivals. Whether the accusations of conspiracy against Herod had any truth to them or not, they landed on fertile ground in Herod's already cracked mind.
He was descending into madness, wasn't he? Seeing danger everywhere, seeing rebellion in their popularity, treason in their heritage, seeing the ghosts of their mother and other Hasmoneans he'd killed.
And the way he had them executed. It reveals the depth of his tyranny by this point. It wasn't a snap decision in anger, it was calculated, brutal.
Done coldly, legally, strategically. They were executed at Sebast, the city Herod rebuilt and named in honor of Augustus, far enough from Jerusalem to maybe mute the initial public outcry.
But close enough for the news to spread like poison, like ash drifting over the land, and perhaps most chillingly, Roman approval was secured. Augustus, primarily concerned with stability on this volatile frontier, didn't intervene to save Herod's sons.
He essentially let Herod handle his internal affairs, however brutally.
And the people of Judea, Josephus says they grieved openly. Any hope they had pinned on these Hasmonean princes returning some sense of legitimate Jewish rule was just extinguished.
And Herod. In his twisted state, he probably felt a dark kind of relief, mixed perhaps with some grief, but believing he'd eliminated the threat, reasserted his absolute control.
But these actions, they didn't bring stability. They fractured the kingdom right down to its soul. The executions didn't just remove two princes. They revealed the soul of a kingdom fractured.
His power wasn't based on respect or legitimacy anymore, was it? It was based on fear, pure dread.
Absolutely. Dread among his subjects and certainly within his own court. The remaining heirs, the officials, everyone stepped lightly. The whole atmosphere must have been thick with suspicion.
And Herod himself kept changing his will, constantly reshuffling the line of succession, trusting absolutely no one. Not his advisors, not his remaining family.
Not even himself, it seems. He became increasingly isolated, increasingly cruel in his final years. A tragic downfall for a ruler who had achieved so much outwardly.
And this internal decay, this paranoia, it was mirrored by his physical health declining rapidly too, wasn't it?
Yes, reports suggest severe illness, possibly some form of cancer, was consuming him. It likely fueled the rage, the distrust, the erratic behavior. He'd built these magnificent, enduring structures, but his own inner world was crumbling into ruins.
And the people, the ordinary people of Judea.
They suffered silently. They watched from behind drawn curtains, lighting lamps against a deepening dread, longing for justice, maybe praying for deliverance, but terrified to speak out. It was a heavy, fearful silence that settled over the land, the kind of silence that often comes before a storm.
This is such a dark chapter, but it holds a stark reminder for us, doesn't it? Even when outward structures seem strong, like Herod's incredible buildings, his seemingly absolute power-deep, unseen decay can be rotting things from within.
It's true. And in our own lives, those periods of intense internal struggle, maybe battling fear or grappling with perceived injustice, they can feel like that deepening shadow, like something threatening to overwhelm us.
Yet even in those incredibly difficult seasons, the message here is that God is still at work. Maybe not in the chaos itself, but in the silence, in the hidden suffering that often precedes a breakthrough, a change, an upheaval.
He's preparing the ground, preparing for hope, for future truth to emerge, often in ways we simply cannot see at the time. The absence of an immediate answer or a visible change, it never means God is absent from our own struggles, our own shadows. He's there.
Okay. From the darkness of Herod's court, let's lift our eyes way up to the heavens.
Yes, let's talk about the celestial whisper that was unfolding throughout 7 BC, the triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the constellation Pisces.
An event happening far above the reach of kings, completely independent of human politics and paranoia, just this silent, slow, and breathtaking cosmic dance.
It's incredible to contemplate, isn't it? Imagine looking up into the night sky that year. You'd see Jupiter, the planet the ancients often called the kingly star, associating it with rulership, justice, divine authority.
And Saturn, seen as, well, a bit more complex, associated with time, destiny, judgment, established order, sometimes even linked specifically with the Jewish people in certain astrological traditions.
And these two giant planets appeared to meet in this exactly, particularly the astrologer priests of the East, the Persian Magi, the scholars of Mesopotamia, the Chaldeans. They were renowned for their incredibly sophisticated understanding of celestial movements and their meanings. For them, a triple conjunction like this, involving these specific planets and this specific constellation, it would have been impossible to ignore.
It would have been seen as an invitation, wouldn't it? A profound omen stirring deep wonder and anticipation about some major world-altering event.
These weren't just, simple fortune tellers reading palms. They were serious scholars, observers of cosmic patterns who meticulously connected these events to ancient prophecies and traditions.
Which brings us to that tantalizing question we explore in the book. Was this the moment? Was this the moment the heavens began to murmur of a birth to come?
Was this the very first flicker of the light that would later draw men westward across deserts seeking a newborn king?
Now, we have to be careful. No ancient text explicitly says the 7 BC conjunction was the star Bethlehem. It's not that direct.
No, it's not. But the fact remains that the heavens themselves were busy in this extraordinarily rare and meaningful way, right around this time. And that resonates so powerfully with the biblical pattern, doesn't it?
Absolutely. God using the stars as his first canvas, marking covenants, signaling mysteries, right from the promise he gave to Abraham. Look toward heaven and number the stars, if you were able to number them, all the way to the prophecies in Daniel. It suggests a divine timing and orchestration.
And what's so striking about this 7 BC event is its nature. It wasn't a sudden blazing comet, not a loud shout or a trumpet blast. It was more like a whisper, a glimmer.
A note in the overture, as we put it. A subtle forerunner, perhaps, preparing the way for the more dramatic star that Matthew describes later, guiding the Magi.
And crucially, most people on Earth likely missed it or didn't grasp its significance. Not the crowds in Judea worried about Herod. Not the powerful Augustus focused on imperial matters in Rome. Not even Herod himself, despite his paranoia. Their eyes were fixed downwards.
But the sky had other plans, unfolding according to God's own timetable.
And those plans eventually involved the Magi. Those watchers of stars, those seekers of patterns, men described as wise, probably influential, intelligent figures from the East.
And it seems likely they would have observed this 7 BC conjunction, noted it down, debated its meaning, and started to connect it with their ancient prophecies about a coming universal king whose birth would be marked by a star.
But their journey wasn't immediate. It wasn't impulsive. Seeing the sign was just the beginning. The actual journey described in Matthew likely came later, perhaps prompted by a subsequent sign, or after careful deliberation, preparing for such a long, arduous trip.
Gathering those specific symbolic gifts, gold, frankincense, myrrh, organizing a caravan, planning the route based on their astronomical calculations.
That would take time. Months, perhaps years, we suggest. It was a process, a deliberate, faith-filled response that began with this celestial whisper.
So this whole event speaks volumes about God's cosmic, often unseen preparation, doesn't it?
It really does. When we feel like we're stuck, like nothing significant is happening in our lives, maybe God is aligning stars in our personal heavens, setting the stage for something he plans to reveal later, preparing a path we can't yet see.
He speaks in whispers before he shouts. He gives subtle nudges before clear directives. His timing. It's often hidden from us, operating on a scale far beyond our understanding, but it is always perfect.
It's a powerful reminder that even when our lives feel still, even in the quiet moments, the universe itself is declaring God's glory. His grand, loving plans are constantly unfolding, subtly guiding us towards our true identity, our place in his incredible story.
Okay, so let's try and bring these different threads together now. We've looked at Tiberius's withdrawal, Ovid's quiet beginnings, Herod's internal darkness, the whisper of the stars, all happening around 7 BC.
Seemingly unrelated events across different realms, politics, art, religion, the cosmos itself.
What's the profound meaning holding them together? What does this year of stillness really tell us?
I think the core message is that 7 BC wasn't about dramatic outward collapse. It was about these unseen, subtle, yet deeply significant shifts happening beneath the surface.
We saw Tiberius's absence, creating this silent echo, bending the future of Roman power.
We saw Ovid quietly planting the seeds of a literary work that would transform culture for millennia.
We saw Herod's kingdom outwardly strong but inwardly decaying, revealing a deep brokenness.
And we saw the heavens themselves engaged in this silent cosmic dance, signaling a divine preparation underway.
These instances, taken together, they really reveal something consistent about how God often works, don't they?
Absolutely. He so often prepares hearts, prepares circumstances in these hidden, quiet ways, especially when the world around is noisy, focused on outward appearances, on power and performance.
And this is where we really want to connect it back to you listening today on our true identity, especially if you feel like you're in one of those quiet years yourself.
Those seasons of waiting. Maybe seasons of retreat or times when you feel your contribution is small, insignificant, unseen by the world.
If that resonates with you, we really want to emphasize this truth, drawn from our study of history and God's Word. The absence of outward movement is not the absence of meaning.
Say that again, that's so important.
The absence of outward movement is not the absence of meaning. This is absolutely critical for understanding our true identity in Christ.
Because God is often doing his deepest, most profound forming work in us precisely in those seasons. Our true identity in him, it's often forged in the crucible of stillness.
When we feel unseen, unheard, maybe unproductive by the world's standards.
Those are the sacred spaces where God cultivates things like patience, where he builds deep, unshakable trust, where he fosters a profound reliance on him, away from all the clamor and the distractions of trying to prove ourselves.
It's in the quiet that we often learn to truly hear his voice, to discern his gentle guidance.
And this brings us, finally, to the ultimate unseen beginning. The one that wasn't happening in 7 BC exactly, but was drawing incredibly near. The one that all these subtle shifts were, in God's mysterious way, preparing the world for.
While emperors worried, generals withdrew, poets dreamed, kings raged, and stars aligned. Somewhere else entirely.
In a small, unnamed village, far from Rome's palaces, far from Herod's fortresses, far from Persian observatories, a young woman placed her hand on her belly and felt movement. A flutter, a quickening.
Mary, in Nazareth.
Her experience was profoundly quiet, utterly ordinary on the outside. There was no court, no scribes, no heralds rushing to announce this world-changing event.
Only silence, only the weight of what she carried. This incredible mystery held within her, known fully only to her and her God.
She simply waited, trusting that voice, that angel who had told her, "Do not be afraid."
And the birth that would follow, a little later than 7 BC, it wouldn't arrive with trumpets or legions. It wouldn't immediately challenge empires with earthly power.
No, it would grow first in shadows, in silence, in the quiet embrace of a mother and the labor of obscurity.
Yet this humble, almost unnoticed arrival in Bethlehem. It would fulfill the whispers of the stars, the longing of the ages. It would divide history. It would remake the world.
So, as 7 BC drew to a close, very few people, if any, would have marked it on their calendars as a major turning point.
History tends to remember the loud years, doesn't it? The battles won, the emperors crowned, the laws proclaimed.
But as we've explored today, and as we detail in the fullness of time sometimes, the years that whisper change everything.
They're the quiet years, the ones that slip by almost unnoticed on the surface. But underneath, everything is subtly shifting, realigning, preparing.
And 7 BC was profoundly one of those years. No sudden revolution, no catastrophe, no grand declaration shaking the foundations. Yet in its stillness, it meticulously set the stage.
For the stars had spoken their silent language.
For the poet had begun to weave his enduring tapestry.
For the capable exile had withdrawn, altering the course of power.
For the paranoid king had bled his kingdom from within, revealing its fragility.
For the mighty empire itself had paused, holding its breath in a moment of hesitation.
And for one humble womb carrying the hope of the world, the quiet turning point had already begun.
There were no visible signs yet to the wider world. No shepherds gathered on hillsides just yet. No angelic choirs, no wise travelers arriving with precious gifts.
But the cosmic signs had aligned. The heavens had stirred. The political stage was subtly shifting. The cultural soil was being prepared. And in the pulse of an unborn heart, the age to come was quietly, perfectly being formed.
It began, as so many of God's deepest and most powerful beginnings do, utterly unnoticed by the world.
But in the fullness of time, all things truly come to light.
Thank you so much for joining us on our true identity for this deep dive into the quiet yet pivotal year of 7 BC.
It's been a privilege to share these reflections with you.
We truly hope it's been encouraging, especially if you find yourself in a quiet season. We invite you to continue this journey with us next week as we unpack another chapter from In the Fullness of Time.
Until then, may you find deep peace and recognize God's profound purpose in his hidden work within you. Know that he is always, always faithfully at work, even and perhaps especially in the quiet.